He turned to Asha and asked about the prototype. She said it could fly, but its systems were incomplete. It had no name yet. Elias looked at the glowing plans on the screen and said, "Then call it Erebus." The ship of silence and shadow orders were given. And within hours, the underground hangar roared to life. Massive gates opened under Olympus Mons, revealing the black steel hull of the Erebus, rising from the mist engines, hummed with low thunder as light spread across its surface. Hundreds of engineers cheered as the first human stealth dreadnought powered up for the first time. Elias stood at the front deck, watching the ship move, and whispered that this was how it begins. As the Erebus left the hidden tunnel and entered the thin Martian sky, no one on the surface saw it. Its cloak shimmered and vanished into the storm. Only a single red light blinked once before it disappeared into space. Its mission was clear. Find who betrayed Titan and make the Council of Ice remember the name of humanity. That night the storm over Mars began to calm, but the hearts of its people burned brighter. Families looked up at the red sky and felt something they had not felt in years. Not safety, but pride. In his private chamber, Elias looked at the empty horizon. He remembered the laughter of the alien delegates and the cold voice of the High Judge. He opened a small communication device and sent one message across the dark. "For every human lost on Titan, we will light the stars with fire." The Erebus was already beyond Jupiter, traveling in silence through the black void. Its engines left no trail. Its weapons were armed, and its crew was ready. They carried the anger of an entire species and a promise carved into their hearts. Humanity had been warned. Now, humanity would answer. The moon. Titan floated in the black sea of space, covered in golden fog and frozen plains. Once it had been a proud symbol of human expansion, a beacon of light in the outer system. Now it was silent and broken its great defense. Rings split open like a wound in the night. When the Erebus reached Titan, the crew saw only fire and shadows. Debris drifted everywhere, pieces of ships still burning with cold blue flames. The commander of the ship, Captain Reyna Holt, stood at the main deck watching the screen. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled behind her back. She whispered that this was no invasion. This was murder. Elias Ward appeared on the communication line from Mars, his voice steady but heavy. He asked for survivors. Reyna said there were few life signals, but the air was full of coded noise. It was like someone was trying to hide something inside the static. The Erebus moved through the wreckage, its black hull reflecting the faint light of Saturn. They found an escape pod drifting alone near the ruins of the command tower. Inside was a young engineer named Leon. He was covered in frost and fear. He said the attack came from within the station, not from outside. Someone had opened the shield gates manually. Before the alien ships appeared, he saw the person only for a moment, wearing a Mars Council uniform. The bridge fell silent. Captain Reyna recorded the statement and sent it directly to Elias. He watched it twice, then closed his eyes. The betrayal was not only on Titan, it was inside their own leadership on Vothar Prime. The Council of Ice received the report of Titan's destruction with cold satisfaction. The High Judge said humanity would now understand their place. But one member of the Council Thirka kept silent. He remembered the look in Elias Ward's eyes during the trial. He began to believe that this war would not end the way the judge imagined. Back on Mars, panic spread through the colonies. News of Titan's fall reached every settlement. Families of the miners and soldiers demanded answers. The council tried to calm the people, but rumors spread faster than truth. Some said Earth had been destroyed already. Some said the aliens were inside the system. Elias knew they could not hide the truth for long. He gathered his closest officers in the hidden chamber under Olympus Mons. Dr. Asha Rana showed them the transmission logs from Titan. The alien fleet had appeared minutes after the shields were opened. It was planned perfectly. Elias said there must be a spy feeding them information. He asked who had access to the shield codes. Only 5 names appeared, and one of them was from the Mars Council itself. That night, Elias stood on the surface platform looking at the red horizon. He felt the wind against his face and the weight of betrayal in his chest. He had believed in unity, but now even that was cracking. He thought of the families on Titan and the voice of the young engineer who had begged for help. He made his choice. If Mars was infected by fear, then the cure would be strength. He ordered Captain Reyna and the Erebus to continue deeper into space. Their mission was to trace the source of the alien transmissions and to find the traitors. Trail. They were to move without contact, without beacon, and without mercy. The Erebus turned away from the dead moon and entered the darkness again. Its engines whispered softly as it disappeared into the black. Inside the ship, the crew was silent. They knew this mission meant no return. Captain Reyna stood before them and said, "Humanity did not kneel on Vothar and would not kneel now." The crew answered her with a single phrase, "We stand days past in deep space." The Erebus followed the signal. Trail left by the alien fleet. It led them beyond the rings of Saturn, through the cold edge of Neptune, and into the dark zone where no sun reached. There they found something unexpected, a communication relay built from human technology but transmitting alien codes. Someone had built it secretly to guide the invaders. Reyna ordered the relay scanned. Inside its data core, they found a message signed by a council member from Mars. The name was General Corran Vale, head of planetary defense Elias's closest ally. When the data reached Mars, the shock hit the leadership like a storm. Elias refused to believe it at first. Vale had fought beside him during the first Martian wars. He had lost family for Earth. But the evidence was clear. The codes were his. The voice was his. He had sold Titan for safety. The council demanded his arrest, but Vale had already disappeared. His shuttle was gone, and his quarters were empty. A single message was left on his desk, written in his own hand. "You cannot fight. The ice, Elias, you can only freeze with it outside Mars." The sky turned red as more defense stations powered up. The first real war between humans was about to begin. Elias walked through the silent control room, his eyes burning with anger and disbelief. He knew that this betrayal would cost thousands of lives, but he also knew that humanity's strength was not in its leaders, it was in its people. He turned to Asher and said, "They will not break us. We will build faster, fight harder, and rise higher as..." The Erebus sent its last transmission before going dark. Captain Reyna's voice carried across the comm. "We go where they cannot see. We fight where they cannot reach. We are Erebus, and we will bring their truth into the light, in the far cold of..." Vothar Prime, Thurka received a hidden signal. It was human, and it came from deep space. He opened it and read only one sentence. "We know what you have done." For the first time in his life, the alien scholar felt fear because he realized humanity was no longer running, it was hunting. The flames of Titan still burned in the distance, lighting the edge of Saturn's rings, and in those flames the legend of human defiance began to grow stronger than ever before. The ice world of Vothar Prime was silent as always, but under its frozen surface something was changing. The Council of Ice believed the galaxy feared them and that humanity was broken. They did not know that the storm was already moving toward them, hidden in shadows and silence deep. Under the glacier, the alien scholar Thurka worked alone in the archives. He was not a soldier and not a leader, but he had a mind that saw patterns where others saw only ice. He had begun to hear strange signals in the deep crystal network that powered the planet weak, faint human transmissions repeating again and again. They were coming from below the palace where no human had ever stepped. Thurka waited until the night cycle when the council chambers went dark. He took a small scanner and followed the faint sound through the tunnels. The walls glowed cold blue as he moved deeper. He felt the weight of the frozen planet pressing above him. Finally, he reached a chamber filled with ancient machines buried in frost. The sound was stronger now, a heartbeat of static. He wiped the ice from a console and saw a symbol he did not expect. The emblem of the human fleet far above. In the void, the stealth dreadnought Erebus had arrived. Captain Reyna Holt watched the planet from the black window. Vothar looked peaceful from orbit, a world made of glass and light, but she knew it was the center of all their pain. Her ship's cloak held firm, hiding them from the scanners. The crew worked in silence, the engines whispering like ghosts in the dark. Elias Ward spoke through the encrypted line from Mars. He said they had found the traitor's path leading straight to Vothar. He told Reyna that her mission was no longer just to spy, it was to reveal the truth. If they could show the galaxy what the Council had done, maybe the free worlds would rise. Reyna nodded and turned to her crew. She said that the Council built its empire on lies and fear. She said it was time to break the ice and let everyone see what was buried beneath. The Erebus released a small team of infiltrators. They descended through the frozen storms, disguised as fallen debris. They landed near the lower caverns where Thirka now waited in the shadows. When he saw the humans in black suits emerge from the mist, he did not call the guards. He walked toward them slowly and raised his hands. He said he had been waiting. The human leader, Lieutenant Mara Vance, aimed her weapon, but did not fire. The hall of the Council of Ice was older than any human city and colder than any mountain on Earth. It stood inside a glacier on the planet Vothar Prime, where blue crystals hung like frozen teeth from the ceiling, and mist rolled across the floor. Like a living ghost, in the middle of the Great Hall, the alien rulers of the galaxy gathered to decide the fate of one species. Humanity, thousands of eyes of every color and shape, stared at the tall human standing alone in the center. Commander Elias Ward wore a plain, dark uniform, and his breath rose in small white clouds in the freezing air. He looked small next to the creatures that surrounded him. To his left stood the tall Vothan leader with skin like cracked ice and eyes like knives. To his right was the scaled Krolak Prime Minister, who hissed with every word. Above them all, on a floating throne, sat the High Judge of the Council, whose body was covered in layers of frozen mist that never melted. The High Judge raised his hand, and the hall went silent. His voice was like thunder rolling across an empty sea. He spoke the verdict. The Council of Ice finds the human race guilty of defiance against the universal order. By order of this chamber, humanity will lose all trade, all rights and all contact with the known systems. Any ship flying the human flag will be destroyed on sight. The sound of the verdict echoed through the ice like a breaking planet. Some of the alien delegates began to laugh softly. Others whispered that it was mercy that humans were still alive. But Elias did not move. He did not lower his head or beg for mercy. He simply watched the judge with calm eyes and waited for the laughter to fade. When he finally spoke, his voice carried through the hall clear and strong. He said that humanity was not born under any council. He said that no frozen throne and no alien law had built their world. They had built it with their own hands and fire. He said that humans will survive even in darkness. And even without anyone's permission, a ripple of anger spread among the delegates. The Krolak Prime Minister slammed his tail on the ground and shouted that humans were dangerous and should be erased. The High Judge lifted his hand again and said that the Council had spoken and that the matter was closed. The human colonies will wither and fade, and the universe will forget them. Elias stood for a long moment and then gave a small nod. He turned and walked toward the great door. Guards moved. Aside as he passed, he did not look back. The cold wind of Vothar hit his face as he stepped outside. He looked up at the sky of silver clouds and whispered that they would regret this. Far above the glacier, a single human ship waited hidden behind the shadow of the frozen moon. When the council signal reached them, the ship's engines lit up, and the pilot sent a message back to Mars. Message secure. The council has spoken. They mean to destroy us. The ship then vanished into deep space, leaving. No trace back inside the council chamber. The High Judge met with the inner circle. They spoke of Earth as a pest that had grown too proud. They spoke of how the humans had mined too far, built too fast, and refused to bow. They decided that in 6 cycles a combined fleet would move toward the solar system to erase the problem forever. But unknown to them, one of their own counselors, a quiet alien named Thirka, had doubts. He looked at the empty space where Elias had stood and felt something. Strange, not fear, but respect. When the chamber emptied, Thirka went to his private quarters. He opened a small communication crystal hidden under his desk. He hesitated, then whispered a code that only humans could read. The message left the planet. Silently, 6 cycles you must prepare. They are coming on Mars. The Human Council received the message. Alarms rang across the underground city. Elias Ward returned from Vothar that same night, his ship landing in a storm of red dust. He walked into the council room, still wearing the frost of Vothar on his coat. The leaders of the colonies stared at him, waiting for his report. He said only one thing. They have declared war. The room fell silent. One of the scientists asked if there was any hope of peace. Elias looked at the red wall behind them, where maps of Earth and the colonies glowed in dim light. He said that peace was never given. It was built and defended. Then he opened a sealed folder marked Project Erebus. Inside were blueprints of a massive ship hidden deep under the surface of Mars, a ship that was not meant for peace, but for survival. Outside the dome of the Mars colony, the red storm grew stronger. Lightning flashed across the dust clouds. People in the lower levels could feel the rumble of hidden engines starting again after years of silence. Children asked their parents if Earth was in danger, and no one could answer in the cold darkness between the stars. Messages began to move. Some from friends, some from spies, and some from enemies. The galaxy was watching humanity fall apart, but under the red soil of Mars, a new fire was awakening. Commander Elias stood on the surface of Mars, watching the storm. He thought of the laughter in the council hall and the eyes that had looked down on him. He thought of the judge who had said humans would fade and be forgotten. He closed his eyes and made a silent promise. They will never kneel. The first engines of Project Erebus roared beneath his feet, shaking the ground. In the sky above Mars, a single shooting star crossed the darkness. It was a piece of debris, falling from the outer orbit, burning bright as if carrying a message from the frozen world of Vothar. Humanity was alone. But humanity was not broken, and somewhere deep inside the storm, Elias Ward smiled, because he knew this was only the beginning. Red storms moved across the surface of Mars like angry waves in a burning sea. Inside the underground city of Helios, the lights never went out because fear never slept. Humans had heard the message from the Council of Ice, and now every colony waited for the first strike from the Stars Commander. Elias Ward walked through the metal tunnels of the Mars base, his boots echoing in the empty halls. People looked at him as he passed, some with hope, some with questions, and some with silent fear. He had stood before the alien rulers and returned alive, but his eyes now carried the weight of something larger than survival. In the command center, the human council gathered around a long steel table. Screens floated in the air, showing blurry images of alien fleets moving near the edge of known space. Supplies from the outer colonies had stopped, and half the trade stations refused to answer calls. The Universe had already started to turn its back on humanity. Elias placed a small crystal on the table. It glowed faint blue, showing the message sent from Vothar. 6 cycles they are coming. No one spoke for a long time. Then Dr. Asha Rana, the lead scientist of Project Erebus, broke the silence. She said the shipyard under Olympus Mons was still hidden, but not finished. They needed more time, more materials, and more power. Elias said time was exactly what they no longer had. Above them, Mars trembled. As the storm thickened, lightning flashed red across the domes. Asha said they could activate one prototype ship if the Council approved. It was risky, it was untested, and it might not return. Elias said it would be enough to show the universe that humanity still had teeth. While the Council argued about strategy, Elias moved to the observation deck. Through the glass, he could see the massive shape of Olympus Mons in the distance, a dark mountain under the storm. Beneath that mountain was the heart of Project Erebus, a secret place where engineers and soldiers worked day and night, building the first stealth dreadnought. It was the kind of weapon the Council of Ice believed humans could never make. As he watched the storm, a soft voice called his name. It was Lieutenant Mara Vance, commander of Mars Orbital Defense. She said there was movement near the outer moons of Jupiter. A small alien ship had entered the system and was moving toward Titan. She asked if they should engage. Elias said not yet. He wanted to see who would come first, the Council fleet or the spy inside their own ranks. Later that night, Elias visited the lower tunnels where families lived. Children played near glowing pipes and old miners sat by the heaters telling stories of Earth. He told them to stay close to the shelters and keep the transmitters ready. One miner asked if Earth would help them. Elias said Earth was silent but not gone. Far away on Titan Station, a different story was unfolding. Commander Juno Hale received orders to prepare the outer colonies for defense. She noticed strange power signals on the far side of the moon, but her technicians said it was nothing. Then a communication channel opened by itself. The screen flashed white for a second and a calm alien voice spoke, "Surrender your systems, and we will let your world live." Juno cut the signal and ordered the station to full alert. But it was already too late. A hidden code in the message began to open their shield gates from inside. Back on Mars, Asha Rana detected the sudden energy drop from Titan. Her eyes widened, and she called Elias immediately. "Titan's shields are down. We are losing contact." The room filled with static, then silence. Elias clenched his fists and whispered the word betrayal. Within hours, images began to appear on the deep scanners. Titan Station was burning quietly in the shadow of Saturn. No one could send help, and no one could look away. The Council of Ice had made their first move, and it was brutal. In the war room of Mars, the leaders argued again. Some said they should send a message of surrender before it was too late. Others said humanity must strike back. Elias stood at the center of the storm of voices and said nothing until the room grew quiet. He said that surrender would not bring peace, only slavery. He said that the only way to survive was to remind the galaxy what it meant to be human. Turka said he had no loyalty to the Council anymore. He said he had read the ancient laws of the galaxy and discovered that the so-called universal order was a lie. Long ago, the Council had rewritten history, erasing the species they conquered. Humanity was only the latest to resist. Mara did not trust him, but she listened. Thurika guided them deeper under the palace through a network of ice tunnels. There they found the true core of Vothar, the machine that stored every record of the Council's rule. And inside it, they found something worse than they imagined. The Council had drained life from hundreds of worlds, stealing their energy to keep their own planet alive. They had erased whole civilizations that refused to kneel and used their memory cores as fuel for the cryo sun. The great weapon of Vothar, Elias's people, were not the first to stand against the council, but they were the first to survive long enough to fight back. Mara transmitted the data to the Erebus Reyners, eyes filled with fury as the truth unfolded. She said humanity would not hide this. They would show the galaxy the crimes buried beneath the ice. Before they could escape, alarms blared through the tunnels. The council had detected the breach. Massive. Drones moved through the halls, firing beams of frozen light. The air turned white with vapor. Mara and her team ran through collapsing tunnels, carrying the data core. Thurka followed behind, using his access codes to open paths. One drone fired, and the tunnel exploded. Thurka pushed Mara aside and took the hit. His body froze instantly from the blast. He fell to the ground, but before he lost strength, he gave her a small crystal. He said, "Take this. It holds the key to the cryo-sun." Then, his eyes dimmed and his body turned to glass. Mara reached the surface just as the Erebus uncloaked and descended through the storm. The ship's side doors opened and pulled the team inside. Reyna ordered full power and the Erebus roared upward, breaking through the icy clouds into the void. The alien fleets stationed near Vothar were now awake. They sent hundreds of ships to chase the humans, but Erebus vanished again into shadow. Reyna looked at the frozen planet growing smaller behind. To them she whispered that the council had built its throne on bones and frost, but now everyone would see the truth. On Mars, Elias received the transmission from Erebus. He watched the data of destroyed worlds and the image of Thurka's sacrifice. He knew this evidence could unite the free colonies. He said the council wanted to freeze the galaxy under fear, but they had only awakened fire. Across the network, human colonies began to broadcast fragments of the stolen data. Alien worlds that had suffered under the council started to listen. Whispers of rebellion spread like sparks through the cold stars. On Vothar, the High Judge screamed in fury as he saw the broadcasts. He ordered the fleets to prepare for total war. He said, "No human will be left alive," but deep inside the ice, his palace began to tremble as the first cracks appeared. The voice of Thurka echoed through the communication lines recorded before his death. He said, "The ice cannot hold forever." In the black silence of space, the Erebus moved like a ghost, carrying the proof that would ignite a galactic storm. The crew stood ready at their stations, knowing that the council would come for them next. Captain Reyna said they could hide no longer. It was time for humanity to speak with fire, and as the stars passed by outside the windows of Erebus, the message of defiance echoed again across every human channel. "We are not slaves. We are not silent. We are human." The Cold War of silence was over. The Council of Ice had been exposed. Now the galaxy burned with whispers of rebellion and fear. From the far moons of Jupiter to the mines on Neptune, every human outpost had seen the truth sent by the Erebus. They saw how the Council had stolen from weaker worlds, erased whole races and fed their frozen sun with the life of the innocent. The galaxy was not ruled by order, it was ruled by fear, and humanity had torn away the mask. On Mars, Commander Elias Ward stood inside the command chamber staring at the transmission. Map. Dozens of red lights flashed across the screen, showing enemy fleets moving toward the solar system. The High Judge was coming with everything he had. Elias turned to the officers around him and said the words that every human feared and waited. "For they are coming for us all." The alarms echoed through the underground city. Families ran to shelters, soldiers rushed to stations, engineers worked without rest. The voice of Captain Reyna Holt came through the channel from Erebus, still hidden, near the outer rim. She said the enemy fleets were bigger than anything seen before, but they were slow and proud. If humanity struck first, they could buy time for the colonies to prepare. Dr. Asha Rana stepped forward, her face pale, but her eyes bright. She said that the shipyards under Olympus Mons had completed 2 smaller prototypes based on Erebus. They were not ready, but they could fight. Elias looked at the plans and said, "Ready or not, launch them." Above Mars, the sky glowed red as the defense grids came alive. Old warships from Earth rose again, their hulls patched and engines trembling. Miners from the belt turned their cargo haulers into missile platforms. Even the small colony ships armed themselves with guns made from mining. Laser's humanity was not ready, but it was not weak. In the deep void, Captain Reyna led Erebus toward Neptune, where the first battle would begin. Her crew had been silent for hours. She stood at the front deck, looking at the black sea of stars. Her hand touched the small glass shard that once belonged to Thurka. She remembered his last words, "The ice cannot hold." Forever, sensors detected movement. Hundreds of alien ships appeared out of warp, each one glowing with blue fire. Their formation was perfect, their power unmatched. The Council fleet had arrived. Reyna gave the order, no hesitation, no retreat. Erebus powered up its shadow drive and vanished from their scanners. Human ships hiding behind Neptune's rings waited for her signal. When it came, they attacked together. The first wave of missiles cut through the dark, like burning arrows. Alien shields flared blue as explosions rippled across their formation. The humans moved like ghosts, using every rock, every orbit, every shadow. Old tactics from forgotten wars. The aliens fired blindly, filling the void with beams of ice energy. Many human ships were destroyed instantly, but they did not stop. Erebus reappeared behind the enemy line, its black hull reflecting their fire like a mirror. Its rail cannons fired once, twice, 3 times. Each shot tore through a cruiser, splitting it apart. Reyna's voice rang across all channels. "We are not prey. We are human. Fight for the worlds that cannot fight." From Mars, the people watched. The battlefield shaking, and silent children held hands in the shelters. Old soldiers stared at the screens, remembering Earth's first wars. Elias listened to the sounds of explosions through the comm. He said to Asher, "Record everything the galaxy must see this." The battle lasted for hours. By the end, half the alien fleet was gone, and the rest retreated to regroup. But humanity had lost too. Dozens of ships drifted lifeless. Reyna watched them fade into the dark and whispered a quiet promise. "To the fallen, your fire will not go out." Then the warning came from the scanners. A second wave of alien ships was approaching from behind Mars. The Council had sent its main force to strike the heart directly. Elias ordered immediate evacuation of civilian sectors. He turned to Asher and said, "We cannot hold Mars forever, but we can make them pay for every meter they take on the surface." People looked up as the sky began to flash with blue light. The first energy beams from orbit struck the ground. Mountains broke apart, domes, shattered air turned to flame. Still, the defenders fired back from underground launchers, sending rockets into the sky. The planet itself seemed to fight. When communication lines with Mars began to fail, Reyna received Elias's final message. He said, "Do not turn back, keep moving forward. The Council wants to break our spirit, but they will only find fire." Then his signal was lost. Tears burned in Reyna's eyes, but she did not stop. She ordered Erebus to head straight for Vothar Prime, the frozen heart of the enemy. If Mars was to fall, then their enemies would fall with it, back on the dying planet. Elias stood on the ruins of the command tower, watching the flames rise across the red horizon. He knew the end was near, but he also knew it was not defeat. He turned to the soldiers around him and said, "Remember this moment, because they will tell stories about it for 1,000 years." Then he looked up at the sky where Erebus had disappeared and smiled. The humans on Mars fought until their weapons melted and their lungs burned. The Council fleet finally silenced the planet, but they did not find fear, only defiance. Every message from the colonies repeated one line again and again. "We are not slaves. We are." Human in the darkness beyond Neptune. Erebus traveled alone through the silence. Reyna stood at the window watching the distant sun flicker behind her. She whispered that humanity had lost Mars, but not its soul. Ahead of her lay the frozen world of Vothar, where the council waited. And behind her burned the fire that would never die. The galaxy thought humanity was broken. But the truth was simple. Humanity had just begun to fight. The frozen world of Vothar spun in silence at the edge of the galaxy. Its mountains of ice glowed with pale blue light, and its surface was lined with silver spires that reached toward the stars. This was the throne of the Council of Ice. Here they had judged entire species. Here they had spoken their verdicts. Here they believed no one could reach them. But on this day something moved in their skies. A dark shape glided through the thin clouds like a shadow born from fire. The human warship Erebus had arrived. Captain Reyna Holt stood at the command bridge, looking at the white planet filling the view. Her crew was exhausted, wounded, hungry and silent, but their eyes still burned. They had lost Mars. They had lost millions. Yet their spirits were made of something the Council could not understand. Hope mixed with anger. Reyna turned to her officers and said the words that echoed through the ship. "We end it here." They nodded. No fear. Only purpose. The Erebus descended through. The thin atmosphere, its hull shaking from the cold pressure. The scanners showed massive defense grids surrounding the main citadel. Energy towers were buried under the ice like frozen serpents, waiting to strike Dr. Asha Rana's last transmission. From Mars had included a warning about those towers. Reyna whispered to herself, "I know, Asha. I am ready." She ordered the ship to dive lower using the black field cloak. The ship slid between the defense lines, silent as a ghost, through the viewports. The crew saw the great citadel of ice rise before them, a structure so large it could hold a moon inside. Every pillar shimmered with trapped light. Every surface reflected the stars like a mirror of death. Inside that citadel, the High Judge waited. He watched the human ship approach and smiled a cold, cruel smile. His voice echoed through the frozen halls. The species of heat returns to die in the cold. He raised his hand and gave the command, "Fire." The planet came alive. Hundreds of energy beams shot upward, slicing the sky. The Erebus swerved, hard engines roaring. Reyna gripped the rail as the bridge tilted. Warning lights flashed red, shields collapsing one by one. She shouted, "Release drones." From the belly of the ship, a swarm of small black spheres launched into the air. They raced toward the towers and exploded with blinding light. Chunks of ice shattered into clouds. The surface shook as if the planet itself cried out. Through the smoke, the Erebus dived straight into the heart of the citadel inside. The ship alarms screamed. One engine gone, hull breach in Section 12. Still Reyna ordered full thrust. The crew worked without pause, every move precise. They had no time for fear. The citadel gates opened, releasing dozens of silver warships shaped like blades. They surrounded Erebus, firing streams of ice plasma. The shields flickered blue to red, then to nothing. Reyna gave one order, "Ram the gate." The ship's engines flared white. It smashed through the entrance wall in a burst of light and flame. Metal screamed, ice turned to steam, and the Erebus came to rest inside the ancient Hall of Judgment. The High Judge stepped forward, his body glowing faint blue, his voice calm and sharp. "Human, you come here to die." Reyna stood in front of the cracked viewport, her uniform torn, her face marked with blood and smoke. She said maybe, but not alone. She pressed a small switch on her wrist. Across the galaxy, a hidden signal activated. The surviving colonies received the code, and every human station began transmitting the same message. The truth of the Council, the crimes, the executions, the slavery, all shown across every system. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw the monsters behind the masks. The High Judge turned in, anger, his control fading. His world of silence was now filled with noise, truth and rage. Reyna looked up at him and said, "This is how ice breaks, not with power, but with truth." He raised his hand to strike her down, but before his weapon could fire, the Erebus reactor overloaded. The ship's AI spoke the final line. For Mars, for Earth, for all who froze under their rule. The explosion ripped through the citadel. The ice mountains cracked from pole to pole, towers fell into the deep fissures. The sea under the planet boiled. From orbit the destruction looked like a sun rising in the snow. When the light faded, the citadel of ice was gone. Only a broken world remained spinning quietly in the void. Weeks later, survivors from the colonies picked up fragments of Erebus near the ruins. Among them they found a black box, still transmitting one steady signal. A voice. Reyna Holt saying, "Humanity does not kneel. Humanity endures." That message spread faster than any fleet could travel. It reached every corner of the galaxy. To slaves on distant moons, to miners in forgotten systems, to rebels hiding in asteroid caves, they all heard her words and whispered them like prayer. Humanity does not kneel, humanity endures. And across the stars, something new began. The fire that started on Mars had reached the heart of the enemy and kept burning. The Council of Ice was shattered, but its remnants still lived, hiding in the dark. And in the silence of space, a new alliance was forming under one flag. The banner of humanity, the citadel of ice, was gone. Its towers had melted into oceans of broken glass. Its judges had vanished into the void they once ruled. But their fall was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, the message of Captain Reyna Holt echoed. From world to world, her final words became a promise carried by every human ship. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity endures. It spread faster than any army. Miners in the belt painted it on the walls of tunnels. Children on Mars whispered it before. Sleeping, even alien slaves who once feared the Council began to repeat it in hope. The fire of one ship had become a storm on the remains of Mars. Commander Elias Ward's flag still stood among the ruins. Asharana survived the bombardment and gathered what was left of the colonies. From underground shelters they built transmitters using scrap metal and old generators. They called themselves the Iron Suns, a name that spoke of warmth born in darkness. The Iron Suns grew fast. Every human outpost sent what little they had: ships, fuel, soldiers, engineers. Even some alien refugees joined them, those who had seen the truth of the Council's crimes. Asha stood before a crowd of thousands and said the words that would shape their new world. The cold tried to silence us, but we have found our voice again. From the wreck of Erebus, salvaged fragments were turned into a monument. Its cracked black hull was placed on a new base built from Martian rock. Above it burned a single light, the eternal flame of humanity. Months later, deep in orbit around Jupiter, a meeting took place. Representatives from every surviving human colony gathered inside the massive ring station, Haven 1. It was the first Council of Humanity. No robes, no thrones, no verdicts, only purpose. Elias Ward, now older and scarred, opened the meeting with a clear voice. He said, "We are no longer a scattered people. We are the sons and daughters of fire, and we will never freeze again." The crowd stood and shouted the same words until the station shook. That moment the human race was reborn, not as victims, but as builders of destiny. But far beyond the light of human colonies, something stirred in the dark. The remains of the Council's fleet, hid near the edge of the galaxy, regrouping. The High Judge had survived his fall. Half of his body was gone, replaced with silver ice. He watched the rise of the Iron Suns through cracked screens and whispered, "They think the cold is dead, but ice always returns." Back on Haven 1, the Iron Suns launched a new fleet. The first warships designed not for defense, but for freedom. Their hulls gleamed black and red. Their names were chosen from lost heroes: Erebus II, Mars Rising, Aurora, Silent Sky. And at the center of them all was the flagship Reyna Holt, built in honor of the woman who had broken the council. Asha stood on its bridge, with Elias beside her. Through the viewport, they saw hundreds of ships aligning. "In perfect formation," she said softly. "Once we were prisoners of the cold. Now we light our own suns." Elias nodded and replied, "Then let us burn bright enough that the darkness never returns." The new fleet moved toward the edge of the solar system. Their mission was clear: to hunt down what remained of the Council and bring freedom to every corner of the galaxy. As they passed the orbit of Pluto, the stars seemed to shimmer with silent applause. For the first time in history, the galaxy looked not at humanity with fear, but with respect. On a distant moon, a small alien child watched the transmission of the new human flag rising above Haven 1. The child turned to its mother and asked, "What does that mean?" The mother smiled and said, "It means the fire has come back to the stars." The High Judge's hidden fleet watched in silence. His second-in-command asked, "What shall we do?" The judge's voice was cold as he replied, "We will freeze them again." But even as he spoke, his scanners picked up hundreds of human signals spreading faster than ever. The ice had no chance against the fire of a united race. Back near Earth, new cities began to rise. Engines roared in the night sky. Humans and aliens worked side by side, rebuilding the old world into something new. No more councils, no more cold verdicts, only the strength of those who had survived, and at the center of it all, the monument of Erebus burned brighter each day. Pilgrims came from every world to touch its metal surface. Some cried, some prayed, some smiled. Above it, engraved in simple words, was the line that defined them all: "We are humanity, we do not kneel. We endure from the ashes of Mars and the ruins of ice." A new era began. The dawn of iron suns spread across the galaxy, bringing light to every frozen world. And somewhere deep in space, where the stars burned faintly, a whisper moved through the dark. A voice older than war, older than fear. It said quietly, as if to itself, "The cold is gone, but the fire remains, the fire of humanity."